Well, I decided to stand because I had spent the previous number of years calling upon people to stand up. And you'll recall back in the day that the Fianna Gael government had been responsible for a whole range of policies which were deepening the inequality within the state, and a whole section of people were annoyed and concerned about that. And then my friend Arthur Morgan had said that he wasn't going to go forward again. That actually had been his stated intention when he stood for a second term. So, without discommoding anybody in a local constituency, and I suppose trying to give a bit of leadership in what was clearly a challenging time for people in this part of the island, I came forward, consulted with the local organisation, found that there was support for that proposition, and then put my name forward for convention. And I know Louth, like most, Northerners, you not only travel through Louth on the way to other places, but, over the years, particularly in the coulees, I spent a lot of time just hiking, hill walking, and so on. And my family, back to my granny, used to rent a cottage there in the summer. So it's a great county, it's a great constituency, and I was very honoured when people there elected me.
Right, okay. So in this election now, and even I suppose before and after this election, what do you see as the main issues for the voters in Louth, Eastmeath?
Well, this area has been, because of its closeness to the border, has historically been disadvantaged. It's cut off from its natural hinterland, and we have been working with others in the constituency to develop an economic zone and to work within the natural region of South Down, South Armagh, up into Newry and Mourne, and then back into County Louth. Unemployment. We have 5,000 people on the housing list, and that doesn't include other people who may not be on the housing list. The council didn't build one social or affordable house last year, not one. This is a big rural community. It's a bit of a contradiction in terms. It's a big rural community, some very, very rich farmland, but in the hilly areas, some poor, small sheep farmers and hill farmers. So they all need supported, and we've developed a good relationship with the local IFA, and we support them in their endeavours to get a good deal for the farmers. We are not exploiting to our fullest potential the enormous tourist potential of the region from Eastmeath, because the constituency takes in Eastmeath. So if you go down to the Boyne and travel up towards Slieve Gullion, you start off in Neolithic Ireland. You travel into the orange part of our tradition. You bump shoulders with Oliver Cromwell. You move up, and there are the Vikings waiting for you. And then you're going through a landscape which is steeped in Cuchulainn and the Irish fables and sagas, and the Red Branch Knights and all of the rest of it. And you have a beautiful coastal region, lots of small pubs, small family-owned concerns, lots of good artisan food makers and food producers, and lots of initiatives being taken in little villages dotted throughout the constituency by local people who have weathered the storm, providing employment for their neighbours. So I'm a big fan of the Economic Council, which was headed up until recently by Padraig White. I want to pay tribute to Padraig White, which is all about trying to get strategic plans for the development of the area. We also have some artisan beer brewers in the county. So that you could see how all of that, how.
So there's a broad mix right across.
Yeah, but we're also halfway between the two biggest airports in the island.
Right.
So visitors coming in might be more inclined to head for the west or or head into Dublin. But if they just if we could persuade them to turn their car,
Right.
and if we could put together a little package,
And we could get them to stay in County Louth.
yes, even because I mean the big thing about tourism is to get people to actually stay in the county overnight, and and I'm sure you could put together a package of hill walking, of historical tours, and some people are doing that in Drogheda. That we could in the time ahead exploit that fully for the benefit of the people here.
Okay. So in your 5 years, what's as close to 5 years now, representing the people of County Louth, what would you say are among your greatest achievements in public life for the people of Louth, Eastmeath?
Well, we're fighting the good fight on behalf of DKIT. I think it's a wonderful institution. It does terrific work, has a huge potential, and really is the way that level of education needs to go. More comprehensive, bringing in young people. We were able to persuade a lot of people from the north who hadn't been signing up. There are now more Northerners signing up for DKIT. We fought, it isn't an exclusively Louth issue, but we fought in support of the Happy New Year's campaign, which was a campaign mostly run by parents and mostly run by mothers for children who are profoundly deaf, and some of them had got what's called a cochlear implant. Now, some people don't like cochlear implants, but that's another argument. These parents do. But their children only had one. And in the north you get two, or Britain or any other European state. But here, for reasons of cost, they've only given a child one implant. And then to come back and get a second implant is hugely traumatic for the child, but also above a certain age, I think it's 4, doesn't have the same potential as it would if you were earlier than that. So we supported them in their campaign, and we had a big breakthrough. We won it. Right. We actually itemised a number of campaigns. The other one was around the victims of the abuse in the Magdalen Laundries, and that involved quite a lot of people, women from this county. The other big issue was around symphysiotomy, and that's a word I didn't even know before I came in here. And it's a barbaric practice based upon fundamentalist beliefs which just didn't value women at all. And I've met many of these women who are now quite elderly and are suffering as a result of their ill treatment. And one or two locally here were just leaders. What we did was come in and support them. Arthur Morgan had done it before me, and Queven O'Quillan had done it in his time. And I'm not satisfied in each of those campaigns that the government has yet to meet its obligations, but certainly it has had to acknowledge them. And for me, one of the highlights of my time in Leinster House was when the women came into Leinster House. And they got the acknowledgement from the Oireachtas. Then there's a myriad of other campaigns ongoing around homelessness, around unemployment, around access to education, trying to reverse all of those cuts which really, really affect people in this constituency. We're fighting very hard for the county hospital. I would remind people, particularly coming into the election, that all of the other TDs in this constituency voted for all of those cuts, whether it's water charges, tax and family home, cuts in child benefit, increases in prescription charges, end of the bereavement grant, the telephone allowance, every single little miserable, mean-spirited cut that you can think of. The Fine Gael and Labour TDs and senators voted for every single one of them.
Now, it's one thing to be in opposition, it's another thing to be in government. We've seen the Greens and we've seen other parties promised a lot. The Greens had to backtrack on a number of issues, be it Corrib, be it Shannon, be whatever it might have been, issues that a lot of supporters would have felt were essential to them. Now, Sinn Féin have said they'll only go into government if you're the majority party. Who knows what will happen? How could we be convinced that what Sinn Féin, I suppose is a question you could put to any opposition party, that what's been promised in opposition can actually be delivered when you get to government?
Well, we are in government in the north, and some people, and I don't say this to score points, I think it's very understandable, would never have believed that that was possible, and that's taken for granted, and that's in a way a good thing. So what was deemed impossible is not only possible, but it's working. And of course, yes, there are deficiencies, but in terms of what we promised to deliver, we have delivered, and people are benefiting from that. We came forward in this election very, very conscious, and I'm very conscious. I do a lot of town hall meetings, and that the instinct is, you come into me and you say to me, will you support this? The instinct is to say yes. Right, so I've always been more cautious in that, because you just can't promise the sun, the moon and the stars. You may be able to say to people, we support you, but that might take 5 years to get around that, and we agree with you in principle. So what we did was we worked with the Department of Finance under the leadership at our end of Pierce Doherty, and we calculated with them that there is 8.6 billion available for the next 5 years if the growth continues at the current rate of 3% or thereabouts. We added 2 billion to that from a series of savings that we would make and additional taxes, which do not tax workers, but they're taxes on sugary drinks and taxes on gambling and so on. And then we decided to put 1.6 billion of that aside for a contingency fund, because whatever recovery is underway at the moment is a result of global factors, not a result of what the government's doing. So that could hit turbulence at any time. So we've set aside 1.6 billion to deal with that. We also haven't included in our wealth tax, because we can't get a costing for that, and other monies which may be available, we haven't included that. So we've tried to put away money for a rainy day. The rest we're going to put into public services. Our attitude to health is that we want a universal, free at the point of delivery, public health service. It's distinctly different from the one that we have at the moment, and that arises from our conviction that citizens have rights. In a republic, the republic's supposed to be the property of the people. Yeah. So what right do you have? You have a right to a home, or you should have. You have a right to a job, access to education, clean environment, health service. Yeah. So that's one of our big items. Now,
if I could just mention those figures, the figures that you brought up about a week or so ago, you found about a 2 billion hole in the government's figures themselves. The Sinn Féin figures did, and Sinn Féin got some credit for that. Do you think Sinn Féin got the credit it deserved in the national media between that and in more recent times? You've been quite critical yourself of the coverage Sinn Féin have got in the media. Do you think Sinn Féin are getting the coverage on that issue and on other issues that they deserve, or relative to their size and support?
Well, the independent media group, are avowedly anti-Sinn Féin, and that's their entitlement. They can, so they don't hide their disfavour or their opposition to Sinn Féin. So they do intend to then deal with matters in general propaganda terms, and they also create stories on an ongoing basis. RTE, we have complained to them formally. They're a public service provider. We only want those who we represent to get the same our space or coverage as all the other parties. We're not looking for anything additional or anything extra. We noted the fact that for days that no voice of a Sinn Féin representative was carried. That our daily press conferences by Mary Lou or by Pierce Doherty or by myself or by others were not being broadcast. They may have been mentioned, there may have been a still, but at the same time, the other parties were covered. There's a row going on at the moment. We did highlight the 2 billion, and I don't think it was a mistake, by the way. I think it was quite deliberate by the government to inflate the monies that were available. We did highlight that. I think that's one of the reasons why the government Fine Gael particularly are in trouble. But they're still in trouble. They are still $500 million short. We've called upon Michael Noonan to cost or to publish the costings, because we're getting the costings from the Department of Finance, as he alleges he is. So we have said our costings are up on our website. We have asked him to publish that. Pierce Doherty today is calling upon him to debate these matters publicly with him. And again, I make the point that this is deliberate on their part. Yeah. They were wanting to present to the voters a proposition which, on the one hand, saw them taking $4 billion out of the income of the state to give it away, and at the other hand, they were saying they were going to invest in public services. Now, notwithstanding the fact that they had 5 years to do that and didn't do it, the fact is they don't have the money to do it if they're giving away $4 billion.
Okay, and just to look at the coverage again, I mean, in the days of Section 31, Sinn Féin weren't allowed on the national media. Some people say even before that was fully implemented, it was a de facto implemented by RT. Is this a kind of a modern day Section 31, do you think, that they're deciding not to include?
It mightn't be as thoughtful as that. You see, the fact is that they have been used for decades now to, a three-party system, more or less. The PDAs may come and go and the Greens may come and go, but basically Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have dominated politics here, and the Labour have been in and out of coalition with them. So we have a new dispensation emerging, and that new dispensation includes Sinn Féin. In the last election across the island, more people voted for Sinn Féin than voted in the 19 historic election. More people now are opting for our party, opting for a Republican alternative. And in the centenary of the rising, more and more people are engaged in what is a republic, what is republicanism. Have we squandered what the men and women of 1916 went out and fought for and were executed for, and so on. So, the some of the media, like the independent group of newspapers, have their own position. RTE just hasn't caught up. I don't think there's a conspiracy or a plot at the heart of it. I just don't think that they have caught up. Like, not too long ago, I wouldn't have been allowed into an RTE studio. So on that personal level, I get on well with most of the journalists, but the establishment has to wake up to the fact that there's now new politics.
Okay, and the bringing up of cases like Thomas Slab Murphy, is that, because that's not necessarily a local election issue, is that part of a campaign against Sinn Féin, do you think?
Yeah, you'll find that on this issue with this individual, Tom Murphy, accused of not making tax returns which he contests, while it's still part of court proceedings, becomes a matter of public debate in the Dáil and in the general media. A number of years ago, when Michael Noonan was the leader of Fine Gael, they failed to make tax returns.
Okay.
No issue.
Yes.
Not they went and sorted it, and that's fair enough. I had made the point that Tom Murphy should have been tried by a jury of his peers if it had gone as far as a trial. That was then seized upon on the back of the brutal murders in Dublin to distract, in my opinion, attention from the government's cuts in Garda numbers, which were felt most keenly here in Louth. One of the big issues in Louth, which I should have mentioned earlier on, is the fact that lots of people are quite frightened in their homes at night, especially people living up long lanes or in some of the more rural parts of the constituency, and they want the reassurance of a guard on the beat, or if they phone in that a guard will be available. And we've seen the closure of stations and the lack of resources for Garda Síochána. So there are all issues which, rather than deal with them, these other issues are seized upon as a distraction.
Okay. Now, just to look at yourself, there's a lot of political leaders right across the world who've led different movements. After a movement gets to a certain stage, either they step aside or somebody else comes into the fore. Are you at that stage yet, do you think?
Well, that stage will come. And for as long as my family and my health and our party want me to do what I'm doing, I will do it. One of the issues which motivates people of my generation, and we're blessed with a collective leadership, with a team, and there are people. It's cross-generational, a lot of energy, a lot of idealism, a lot of experience. But one of the things that motivates my generation at the moment is just to try and ensure that what we started in the North in terms of peace develops into something profoundly anchored and rooted and bedded, and it moves into being a prosperity process and then moves towards the development of strategies for Irish unity.
Okay. And finally, just in a nutshell, why should people vote for you and Imelda Munster?
Well, it's an opportunity to elect 2 Sinn Féin TDs, to elect the first woman Sinn Féin TD for County Louth. Not to be at all presumptuous about this, because it's always a great honour to be selected by Sinn Féin to represent the party, and it's a huge privilege to be chosen by your peers. Louth is very much on the map. People know about Louth. They know that there are issues and problems here, but they also know that we have a hugely vibrant community that has a bit of crack, that is looking forward, that wants to not be scared off by the government parties. Remember, the highest non-payment of water charges, or one of the highest, was in County Louth. One of the biggest votes for marriage equality was in County Louth. So this is a progressive constituency. So rather than being scared by the tactics of the government, we're saying to them, and they're saying back to us, that it's hope over fear for the future. We want a good future.